Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me in another video. Today we're going to be talking about the Rowe Summer 2026 collection. I felt this collection was showing us a new direction. It still felt extremely the Rowe, more pared back, minimalist aesthetic in some ways. But this season, something has changed. I think just about their last collection, it was quite sporty, boyish approach to minimalism. Before that, there was quite this monastic tone. Every season, somehow, they are able to interpret their own aesthetic that also connects with the times. But something about this collection felt very different to me, and I think obviously there was this very historic fashion month with so many debuts. In the middle of that, the Rowe continues to do their own thing. One of my favorite collections this season because it just felt like a new departure. It felt like the Rowe was going into new territory here. This is the Rowe's version of couture. Part of me wonders, is this the impact of, in part, the owners of Chanel investing in this brand? Maybe it grants them greater access to resources, or maybe they just needed to show up in a season filled with these epic debuts. But this collection, we saw a lot more dresses, a lot more evening wear. We still had pleated pants, things that you would expect from the Rowe's everyday basics. There was still that. A lot of these pieces felt a lot more elaborate than what we are used to in terms of their style. And I couldn't help but feel, I know the Rowe is now in the orbit of Chanel, but secretly would have loved to see the Rowe do Chanel. But I'm just so thankful for what they're doing here. The volumes, the textures, the feathered pieces, the pleats. There were these nods to vintage couture, but of course they're still doing the Rowe. They're gonna do their own version of this timeless, elegant style. I thought there was a sensitivity to a variety of different shapes. There was no one silhouette. There was no one, like, okay, we're gonna do, I don't know, like mini skirts or something. Their approach, we saw shapes that were structured, shapes that were fluid, looks that felt quite clean, other looks that felt quite textural. Even though the Rowe is thought of as quote unquote like wardrobe staples, the cuts and proportions do evolve each time. And this collection, it definitely did have more extravagance, but the essence stayed true. Like, there were timeless pieces that speak to a variety of different styles. When I saw this first look, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is literally how I dress. Just a really long, like, floaty dress or top, and then like these pants that flare. Then she's wearing this very elegant looking bag. Also, what's interesting about this top is there is this draped like scarf hood detail at the back. Still minimalist, but there is something very expressive here. I also really loved look 12, stunning look 20. Those are looks that like easily I could see myself wearing. But then also looks where if I had an evening occasion to go to, like look 24, again, we're seeing like this lowered waistline. How beautiful is the movement in a piece like this? Or like look 13, there's also look 17, which is in a totally different direction. But again, there was like a lot of different silhouette propositions here. There's a lot of, I think, choice, but it's still a style that exists within the universe of the Rowe. Again, the Rowe does the whole wardrobing thing. You can get a beautiful skirt or these beautiful like wavy tops and then layer it with vintage Chanel or like Yohji Yamamoto or Vivienne Westwood. Like, they're creating pieces that I think can move in a multiple different stylistic directions. But there's also pieces with enough statement if you wanted that to be the focus or you wanted it to go alongside other designers. In essence, how like Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen dress. I think there are people that very much go for this like quote unquote like look of the Rowe and will be like head to toe in the Rowe or looks very inspired by the Rowe. But then there are also people that just want quality pieces to upgrade, to refresh their wardrobe every season. I thought there were pieces that were far more elaborate this year, far more extravagant, and I feel like it'll speak to that as well. You wanted like a great pair of pants or like a really nice coat, like they have that too. Speaking of which, again, I thought the outerwear was absolutely phenomenal. I love this pleated trench. Of course, whenever I think of pleats, I think like Issey Miyake. I also think of looking at fashion of the past. Like, there's also Mariano Fortuny. I think about how like Jill Sander was very inspired by him, but Mary-Kate Olsen has also been seen wearing Issey Miyake. Pleats have just such a beautiful elegance, movement. Also, these pleats, like they're on like the wider side, like there is kind of this like folded paper look. To me, it's like very light, ethereal, really lovely jackets. Like this section second look, I loved these organically shaped buttons, but then you could also see just the branding ever so slightly there, like so tiny. Like you'd have to like catch the light in the right direction to see it. Really gorgeous jackets. But yes, also I felt like the overwhelming number of dresses, evening looks, fluid, structured. I think of this as like less outerwear dominant and more of this evening wear, occasion wear. This season, if there is anything, we want to get dressed up. For spring summer 2026, take out your nice clothes. Like you can still look super casual, like look 17 with the layered tanks and the really voluminous pants with this sash. I think this season, if there is something, we want to feel a little bit more dressed up. Like it's not just about last season ball caps and sporty separates. Of course, there's always going to be that, but the row is showing us we can be extravagant. The row is showing us how to do it. And of course, they're going to do it with such a gentle touch. I feel like with a lot of the collections this season, I was feeling a lot of stylistic similarities with Louise Trotter's recent debut with these like swan-like textures. Of course, like the feathers. Feathers we're seeing everywhere, but something about how I think these dresses do have a true swan look to them. It's not just about high craft that looks like really cold and dense and cerebral. There was an emotion to some of the more intricate looks. But yeah, there was like definitely this look of something more like swan-like. Let's talk about the bags. So first, we have this very Hermes Kelly inspired croc bag. It is what it is. It looks like that. And of course, I think of those famous photos of Ashley and Mary-Kate wearing their Kellys. Mary-Kate also has a croc one. Instinctually, I'm just gonna wanna go with Hermes first, but I also get from a design perspective why they did this. I have my Kelly. I don't really wear it that often, if I'm gonna be honest. The Kelly is like super elegant. I know there are ways you can like do the sangle up, but overall, you wanna get that like really neat and tidy look. It's not always like the easiest bag. Wrap the sangles, to lock the closure, to make sure the flaps over it. It's just there's so many steps. I feel like this probably resolves some of those issues from like a design and functionality perspective. Aesthetically though, it is quite Kelly-like. And I also think there's another side where people don't always want to look like they're wearing an overtly branded bag. It's not like overtly branded, but like that lock, it is very signature, and maybe I can see how some people may not want to wear something so overtly branded like that is so much of a brand signifier. So many people know what that is. I also kind of understand that, but I also think there's something so iconic and special about having a Kelly. I think there is something about like the legacy of like these brands that make them like really special. Next type of bag that we saw were assortment of these like rectangular clutches, but again, when the collection drops, I'll do a thorough review. But we've got look 3, look 4 also had a similar black clutch. They could also serve as wallets. There were several of these. A lot of them look like they kind of have a similar hardware detail as that Kelly inspired croc bag. There was also this plain notebook like clutch. Also, Celine was going for something very similar with these like little notebook clutches. Next, we've got this India East-West, more of that silhouette that we've been seeing. Next, we've got this toiletry-like bag. It's like a men's toiletry bag, like a dop kit. I also noticed there were similar bags from Bottega Veneta this season. What I found interesting is these bags, while they're worn here in this East-West format with Bottega, you could also wear these types of bags north-south. There's also that little strap. Also, this looks like it's an ostrich. We're seeing exotics this season, croc or alligator, and then ostrich. But I think this is also an alternate take on the vanity bag trend that we've been seeing recently. What has been very popular has been that Loro Piana L19 style, but this is more of that kind of men's toiletry bag style, which kind of has, I'm gonna say quote unquote masculine because it's just more associated with something in the realm of men typically use. It's a theme this season, like Chanel, they had the masculine feminine theme. Next, we've got this satin pouch, so kind of hard to see. I thought, is this a Cecily? But the bag is scrunched and it's styled in a way, again, very difficult to see, but the row is continuing on with these silk-like pouches that have become quite popular with the Cecily, which we saw a couple seasons ago. But overall, really great bags this season. Next, I wanted to talk about these hair accessories, these hair combs, and what really struck me was the intimacy of a piece like this and the emotion behind a piece like this, and also the styling of these pieces, like the angles of the photographs. In some angles I was looking at like my mom or my sister or my grandmother, and whenever I think of like this more done up look, I always think it's closer to more of like an Ashley Olsen. These hair combs, such an everyday gesture, but it felt so intimate and relatable. Every woman knows the ritual of doing her own hair, or doing your sister's or your mother doing your own hair. And with Mary-Kate and Ashley, that becomes even, I think, more layered. Two women, twins, distinct yet intertwined, them looking at each other while at the same time looking at oneself. These hair combs just felt like a moment of, I think, a kind of loving recognition of feminine intimacy. So that is the collection. I couldn't help but think that there was something bigger going on here. Again, last season they leaned into more like these sporty American silhouettes, simple white shirts, masculine tailoring. But then I really felt like, is this Chanel's investment? Is this allowing them to expand in different areas? It does feel like there is a sense of fashion alliance going on here. Also, kind of unrelated, but there was something about when I saw Nicole Kidman at the Chanel show, I was just thinking, is Nicole Kidman going for this Olsen smoke break aesthetic? Again, it's just like an oversized shirt and jeans, which really is a very universal look. Like, it's not really anything that groundbreaking. Also, the jeans she's wearing are like cashmere, and the shirt is the Charvet shirt. But it does feel like the Row and Chanel, I'm seeing a lot of similar design language going on here. I don't think it's just the Row is feeling the financial backing of Chanel. The Row and Chanel are in conversation with each other stylistically. That's my video for today. Thank you so much for joining me in another one, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!